Salvete. Today we've got to talk about something very important because it comes up really all over the place in Latin literature. Something called indirect statement. And we're going to start off by taking a look at a couple of sentences in English. The first is a direct statement. The teacher said, quote, "You are so intelligent that if your brain were gasoline, it could power a spacecraft to Jupiter and back," end quote. Well, that's a really nice compliment, you have to admit, and that's exactly what the teacher said. But maybe someone doesn't remember that so well, and teacher said that first period, and by the time you get to lunch, your friend doesn't remember exactly what the teacher said. But your friend wants to tell the story. And so your friend says, "The teacher said that you are really smart." That's an indirect statement. It's indirectly reporting what the other person said. We don't use quotation marks because we haven't quoted the exact words that the other person said. But we've gotten the general idea of it, right? We've gotten the essence of it. We have indirectly stated what the other person said. Now, what does that look like in Latin? Well, there's several pieces here. First of all, it is introduced by a mental faculty verb. Now, what do I mean by a mental faculty verb? Well, it's a verb of things like speaking, thinking, writing, hearing, seeing, and so forth. It's not a verb of big action like jumping, fighting, punching, sailing, right? It's something that really starts off with a mental process. And you say, well, writing is physical. Yes, it is, but it starts off as a mental thing, right? You think about what you're going to write before you write it. Now, here's the part that's really crazy. The subject of an indirect statement in Latin is in the accusative case. Now, that should strike you as strange because the subject, well, in all the other sentences we've had in Latin, has been in the nominative case. In this one instance only, the subject is in the accusative case. The verb of an indirect statement is an infinitive. So it's a good thing we had a video on infinitives. But translated as a regular verb. And you're going to see what we mean in just a moment. But the verb will be an infinitive, but translated as a regular verb. And finally, we usually want to slip in the helping word that into the English translation. We use the word that to make it flow a little bit more smoothly. For example, copy this Latin sentence. Videmus puellas aquam portare. And do the following. Underline the mental faculty verb, circle the accusative subject, and put a box around the infinitive. Pause the video while you do so. You should have underlined videmus because videre means to see. And seeing is a mental processing, right? When I see something, I get an image and I process that in my mind. You should have circled puellas. That's the first of the two accusative words, and puellas is the subject. And you should have put a box around portare. A word ending with are is a present active infinitive. Now see if you can translate this. Pause the video while you give it a try. You should have come up with, we see that the girls carry the water. Or if you prefer, we see that the girls are carrying the water. We included the helping word that. And notice we didn't say to carry. That just wouldn't make sense. We see that the girls to carry the water. That really just doesn't make any sense. So as I said, we have to translate the infinitive as if it were a regular verb. And since portare is a present infinitive, we translated it as a regular present tense verb. Carry or are carrying. Let's try another one. Copy this sentence. Videmus puellas aquam portavisse. And do the same thing. Underline the mental faculty verb, circle the accusative subject, and put a box around the infinitive. Pause the video as you do. You should have underlined videmus again because it's still the mental faculty verb, see. You should have circled puellas again because it's still the subject. And this time you should have put a box around portavisse. It's an infinitive, this time a perfect active infinitive, because it ends with SSE. All right, see if you can translate this one on your own. Pause the video. You should have come up with, we see that the girls have carried the water. Everything else stayed the same. We changed the infinitive to perfect active. Didn't make sense to say to have carried. We see that the girls to have carried the water. That doesn't make any sense. So we had to translate it as a regular perfect tense verb this time, have carried. Now, I know this is getting a little bit deep for us. If we can press on just a little bit more, we're going to finish well. There's an important chart that you're going to want to copy. So you want to start off with 3 columns. Tense of mental faculty verb, tense of infinitive, and infinitive translation. Under tense of mental faculty verb, you need to write present or, and notice I put that in capital letters, future, or, in capital letters again, future perfect. And then I put a bracket around all of that. If your mental faculty verb is any one of those tenses, doesn't matter, if it's any one of those tenses, then the following holds true. A present infinitive gets translated like a present tense verb. A perfect infinitive gets translated like a perfect tense verb. And a future infinitive gets translated as a future tense verb. In other words, nothing special. And you're saying, okay, this is ridiculous. Why even write this down? Well, you're going to see with the second half of the chart. The bottom half of the chart has this. Under tense of mental faculty verb, write imperfect or, capital letters, perfect or pluperfect. And again, I bracketed all of that. If you have any one of those tenses as the mental faculty verb, then something kind of strange happens. No matter which one of those you have, a present tense infinitive will sound like a perfect tense verb. You'll translate it as a perfect tense. If you have any one of those as your mental faculty verb, a perfect infinitive gets translated as pluperfect. And if you have any one of those, imperfect, perfect, or pluperfect, as the mental faculty verb, a future infinitive gets translated with the helping words should or would. Now let's pause here for just a moment. I like to think about this as looking through glass. If you've got a present, future, or future perfect main verb, it's like looking through clear glass. Everything appears just as it is. Present infinitive translates present. Perfect infinitive translates perfect, and so on. But if you have one of the others, imperfect, perfect, or pluperfect, as your mental faculty verb, it's like looking through colored glass. Have you ever had some colored sunglasses? If the lenses are yellow, everything looks yellow. If the lenses are blue, everything looks blue. Well, a similar thing happens here. If I look through one of those tenses, then suddenly a present infinitive looks like a perfect tense verb and sounds that way. A perfect infinitive looks like a pluperfect, and so on. Now this may be getting really confusing, so let's try an example. Copy this Latin sentence. Romani audiunt milites provinciam vicisse. And do what we've done before. Underline the mental faculty verb, circle the accusative subject, and put a box around the infinitive. This time be sure to identify the tense of the word you underline, the mental faculty verb, and identify the tense of the word you put a box around, the infinitive. Pause the video while you do so. Well, you should have underlined audiunt, circled milites, and put a box around vicisse. And you should have labeled audiunt as present tense and vicisse as perfect tense. Now, let's get the English to this. The Romans hear that the soldiers have conquered the province. Present tense, hear, tells me that the perfect infinitive is going to translate just like a regular perfect tense verb. Have conquered. Now we'll see if this all really makes sense by changing it just a little bit. Copy this new sentence. Romani audiverunt milites provinciam vicisse. And do the same thing. Underline the mental faculty verb, circle the accusative subject, and put a box around the infinitive. Once again, identify the tense of the mental faculty verb and the tense of the infinitive. Pause the video while you do. You should have underlined audiverunt, circled milites, and put a box around vicisse. And you should have identified audiverunt as perfect tense and vicisse as perfect tense. Now think about how that's going to affect the translation. We're down to the bottom part of that chart that you had. You have perfect tense as the main verb. How will that change the translation of your infinitive? Well, let's look and see. The Romans heard that the soldiers had conquered the province. Vicisse is still a perfect infinitive. That hasn't changed. But because the mental faculty verb has changed its tense, that also changes the translation in English of the infinitive. So the perfect main verb makes the perfect infinitive sound like a pluperfect in translation. I know that's a lot, so you're probably going to want to go back over that video a couple of times. But that really sets out indirect statement, and we're going to see indirect statement a lot. Waleta.